15-20 minute. Um, I tried to piece together the important parts of my paper. And like I said, the paper is ongoing. It's not a finished product, which is kind of fun to look at a paper like that. So, good afternoon, friends. Sego sewa guego. Samantha Jungiatsne Johasa. Gunikahaga Gadawiamstane. Ashwigina Diwatgano. Waganyatu Dahnu Noalani Wagitalodo. Tuscoran ni Lenape ni Wakonsodo. Hello, my fellow siblings. My English name is Samantha. I originally come from the Six Nations territory, which is near this Grand River in southern Ontario. So some of you in Winnipeg, it's quite cold up there. So I'm grateful that I'm here. um, I now reside in the city of Hamilton, and as Scott had mentioned, I'm a community health worker, PSW worker. I work with a range of elderly to young disabled children, just trying to give them the best life that they can have. Um, and the language I just spoke is called Ganikahaga, which means people of the Flint. Now, I also spoke about both my matrilineal and patrilineal lineage. And for me, that is very important, just because of the stories I share. So through my mother, I am a Lenape Turtle clan, and through my father, I'm a Tuscarora Bear clan. So two very significant clans in my nervous system. Um, and you may be thinking, where the heck does Ginikahaga or Mohawk come from? So back in the day, you can research more about it if you love history and war and things like that. But there was a war that brutally rummaged through my mom's community in Ohio, which led her people to head down to upstate New York, where another war took place called the War of 1812. Some of you may be familiar with that, some of you may not be familiar. That's okay. Again, you can Google that later. Which led her people down here to Canada, and they started to resettle just before the introduction of the system that is now called a reservation was put in place by the Indian Act. And so during this time, my mom's community was dying out due to disease and was barely surviving. So they went to the Mohawk people of Six Nations, or now is called Six Nations, and pleaded that we're dying and we need your help. They graciously accepted my mom's people and into their community. And some of my mom's family found coverage elsewhere, which is now established as the Chippewas of the Delaware, a Moravian town. So a lot of her family still reside there as well. And since being born and living in the community of Six Nations, I was blessed to grow up with elders who spoke the language that I now have a responsibility and duty to carry. So why I brought that as my introduction is because I have some duties and some responsibilities to uphold being here on Turtle Island, but also speaking to, my fellow siblings, my fellow friends here. And I could go on and on about language. That's one of my many passions. I love languages of all sorts. I'm an ESL teacher as well, so I just love engaging in language. It's beautiful. However, I'm here on the pretenses again, sharing my experience in being a part of the Racialized and Indigenous Youth Scholars Program. Upon thinking and praying on what my topic would be for this program, I had to keep in mind the idea of a microaggression. So, a little bit of what a microaggression is: it's a statement, action, or an incident regarding an instance of indirect or subtle or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized groups, such as racialized or ethnic minorities. Um, some primary examples of microaggressions include telling a person of color, "You're so articulate," implying that their intelligence is unusual for their race. Asking someone, "Where are you really from?" suggesting that they don't belong in this space. Or a more gender microaggression is always asking the woman to get the coffee, reinforcing specific gender roles. Or the common term of, I don't see color, which is denying an individual's experience of if of if I have Black friends, that means I'm not a racist. Um, these are all on the border of being racial comments that happen or can happen from day to day, even in today's society. So, in my experience, what I've seen as a microaggression towards Indigenous people is when I share where I'm from. When I tell people I'm from Six Nations or that I speak the Mohawk language, people tend to presume that I'm this radical Mohawk warrior and that I'm an overall angry person. Clearly, I'm not. Maybe on the dodgeball court, but that's a whole nother story. um, that is, and so that one particularly has stuck the most, hitting a deep core, a wound of what it means to hold an identity. And this next example is quite often one that I have received a lot since moving to the city. And it's, you don't look like a real native. Are you sure? And I don't know what these people think a real native looks like. Maybe the ones in the old, Indian and cowboy Western movies. Um, but then again, we're all different. We all look different. We all have our own unique features that make us Indigenous. So upon my research, I have come to the conclusion that this specific example reinforces a disbelief of Indigenous existence. Um, so what does it mean to look Indigenous? This had led me down a spiral of how deep does this truly go? How many tethers in the body does this connect to? And how much of this disbelief runs the nervous systems of my people? And how long will it take to outrun its course in our veins? So I had to ask myself, how can Samantha from Six Nations find a way? That week, I was hit with a powerful sermon by my pastor in Hamilton, who pointed very clearly to me the verse of John 15, verse 5. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. I was humbled that that the outcome of my time in the program was up to God. From there, I quickly knew which pathway to start the development of my paper. I spent a lot of time in prayer and asking God to guide me through this. And as I was redirected back to the Bible 99% of the time, I found a theme or an observation I noticed. And it was the testimonies of each of the disciples who witnessed Jesus in the New Testament. That gave me the idea of looking through my own testimony. Prior to this idea, I didn't really have a grasp on my very own testimony. In the past, I participated in small workshop after a conclusion of a church conference called Elevator Pitch for Modern Day Disciples. We had 90 seconds to blurb out our life before our relationship with God, what brought us to God, and our life now with our relationships with God. And then, as I was in my initial re-embarking stage of my journey with God, I felt like I didn't have much experience to share in the part of with my life with God. And how do you explain the experience of God running after you for years? But I was too afraid. I was too much in my ego. And to stop and say, hey, it's okay to be curious about this guy. Rather than carrying on what the narrative was that this God had already deemed me to hell because I was born brown. A God that took my loved ones away. A God that would never accept me because I was a third generational sinner. But it was just that very idea of life before God what brought me to Him, and life now that I have my own personal experience and relationship with Him. This was going to be my gateway and the heart of my research and paper surrounding microaggressions. I became my own subject, and my paper became my testimony. Who we become from the experiences we face paves the pathway to how we walk and interact with the world. So often we walk blindly from one place to the next, not even paying to mind how we are interacting with our loved ones, our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ, and ourselves. These unconscious micro movements of life can lead to an expression of microaggressions towards one another. Over time, these seemingly minor incidences accumulate and become internalized, affecting both the mental and physical well-being of the human body. This sensitive vessel of emotions and experience often stores these microaggressions, leading to stress, anxiety, and other health issues. In my essay, it explores how microaggressions impact individuals' sense of identity, overall health, everyday lives, highlighting the significant yet frequently overlooked effects. Furthermore, it delves into the healing the identity through an awakening conscious awareness, empowering individuals to recognize the state of their nervous systems, address the responses, and transform these negative imprints into opportunities for personal growth and resilience. I first wanted to prepare my reader, you guys, or even myself when I reread this often, is to understand how our bodies are vessels of how we show up in the world. And to my surprise, I often didn't pay to mind what my body said or did in response to our environments or people we interacted with on the day-to-day. In my journey, I hit a breaking point. Life was crumbling before my eyes. Piece by piece, the world was humbling me. And for the first time, I had no choice but to look and be honest with myself. I was scared. I was afraid. I was unsure of what would lie ahead as I surrendered to the crumbling. In this process, I came across my now mentor, Dr. Nima Rahmani, who taught me the utilization of the polyvagal theory, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges. It is a theory that describes the autonomic nervous system known as the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is responsible for receiving the signals of safety or threat known as neuroception. The polyvagal theory presents a new perspective on understanding the autonomic nervous system and its impact on human behavior. This theory has been influential in fields of psychology, trauma therapy, and it offers insights into how our nervous system influences emotions, social connection, and responses to stress. Understanding this function of the nervous system in polyvagal theory has offered me insights into how these stressors are processed and embodied while I was in my crumbling. So first, we must understand the different stages of our nervous systems. And I'm well aware that some of you may have heard of this theory and may have not heard of this theory, which I'm excited to walk in that journey with you. So we need to understand the layers of our nervous systems that lead us through. It's called the autonomic ladder. We begin with the safety stage, known as the ventral vagal pathway. This pathway is linked to the social engagement, the connections, and the feelings of safety. In this state, we tend to experience a vagal brake on the nervous system. And as we look at some examples of being in this state, keep in mind the ones you may come across in the day-to-day flow of life. Coming home from a long day of work and seeing your loved one, getting a call on the phone from an old friend, taking a few extra moments to breathe deeply, listening to your favorite music on your way home, taking a walk in nature, eating your favorite snack. For me, it's when I run on the trails or in my prayer time with God. All these experiences and examples are a way to let our nervous systems know we are safe, we are free, and we are connected to the divine. A step below on the autonomic ladder is where we experience danger, and this is known as the sympathetic nervous system. This system is a part of our body's autonomic nervous system and is responsible for the psychological fight or flight response. That it primes us to get ready for battle or to escape a threat. We begin noticing an increase of heart rate, blood pressure, breathing rate, while also slowing down the digestion, which for women we know it as bloating. And this system works this system works on its own without conscious effort or control. Often we've spent years in this state unknowingly, and it becomes our new normal. In this state, what is activated by working the system's neurotransmitters like neuroadrenaline and adrenaline. There's longer scientific terms. I'm not good with them. So I'm not going to try to butcher it. To communicate between nerve cells and the target organs. This system is located near our spinal cords and near the major blood vessels. It's also connected to the adrenal glands, which is responsible for pumping out adrenaline and into our bloodstream and amplifying that fight or flight response. Mind you, in present day context, we don't often experience those primal effects or those primal threats as we once did in the Stone Age. We don't have some dinosaur coming after us or some that big thing from Ice Age coming after us. However, as we transition and develop as a human race, our threat detectors still intact are still intact as if we do have such threat on such a smaller scale. In today's age, some common day examples are when we're faced with a demanding task like writing an essay, potential threat, or an unsolicited or uncalled for event. Day-to-day tasks like physical exercise activates our sympathetic nervous systems as our heart rate and blood circulation rises. It also activates during our waking up stage. So sometimes you may wake up and you're like, oh, I'm late for work. And it's like, no, you're not. Finally, and the last little piece I will get into is sometimes this stage is the unrecognizable state of the autonomic ladder, and it's called the dorsal parasympathetic system. And this is where we specifically get experience from life threat. This system is a part of the vagus nerve that is responsible for the shutdown response. And this system is activated when the body perceives a situation as overwhelming or inescapable, leading to a freeze response as a survival mechanism. It is characterized by immobilization, dissociation, and a decreased heart rate and blood pressure. This system is responsible for more of a primal response, similar to playing dead, like a possum. It can feel like being frozen, It can feel numb or disconnected from one's own body. Impact on health is through chronic activation, leading to chronic health problems like diabetes, Crohn's disease, cardiovascular disease. However, due to present day stressors, we can also see that there is a functional freeze or functional depression. Most people, including myself, have lived or are currently living in this state unknowingly. And so, with that in mind, that is just one theory that I've delved deep into my paper. The second theory, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time just because it's not as it's significant, but it's not as important, and it just gives us some more context of taking things less personally. So the second theory and the second research that I've used in this paper is our role in dynamics. So I looked at this, it's called the Cartman Drama Triangle, and I'm not sure if any of you are aware of it, but you can Google it as well. And I'm not good with making slides, so I didn't make any slides for this presentation. Speaking is enough. So the Cartman Drama Triangle is a model that was created by the psychiatrist named Stephen B. Cartman. And he created this in 1968 to see that there are clinical roles of victim, perpetrator, and rescuer that plays out in our everyday interactions. And so individuals often find themselves trapped in this loop where microaggressions can position themselves as victims and evoke defensive responses as prosecutors or compel them to seek resolution as rescuers. And by breaking free from this triangle, individuals can move beyond the destructive cycle, fostering healthier relationships and promoting personal empowerment. So, with that in mind, I wanted us to take a look at different experiences we have dealt with in our own personal lives and to see that, yes, those things are present day, but we can also empower ourselves to go beyond the limits of that microaggression or any sort of limitation that people have placed on us. And microaggressions does not have to just be specifically for racialized people. Like I talked about, it's microaggression is can be for people with disabilities, people with like gender specific, even ageism. I see a lot of this as in my work field of, assuming someone can't do something for themselves when they have their brain, they have their vocals, they have the ability and the willingness to even try to do something on their own. So I hope I didn't talk too much, but I hope today gave you a little glimpse of what it means for me and for my people to heal from this so that we can all be a united front in uplifting God's word and what he has in store for us. Yeah, I think that's where I'll end. That feels quite complete. So thank you all for listening, and I hope I didn't put you to sleep with all my terminologies, but I appreciate every single one of you, and I'm grateful that I can see you guys. Um, I was so worried about that, but yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Samantha. I don't think you bored anybody at all. And just to prove that, I'm going to invite folks just for a minute or two if they have any questions or clarification that you have for Samantha. Could you offer it into the space before we move to the next piece?
In addition to awareness, like once you become aware of how you're being impacted and how your system has been impacted by microaggressions and trauma, if you like, what are some concrete things that you were able to do to kind of counteract that impact on your life and claim a different reality for yourself?
I really like that question. It's a, I'm not good with hypothetical questions, so thank you so much for the very specific, centered question. And it's good to see you, Jordan. So how have I, how have I placed this in, and I'm using my own terminologies here, but how have I placed this into my life on like a day to day? Is that the framework of your question? Yeah. So when I first understood these theories, and they're not just theories, they're also practices within themselves, um, is I had to take an overview perspective. So in the moment, so I'll give you a before, a middle, and an end. So before, like, how am I doing on the day to day? What is my nervous system like? I'm responsible for this body. I'm not responsible for all these lovely bodies on the camera. I mean, although one day maybe I will be, but I'm not saying anything. But so I'm responsible for this meat soup, if you call it. Um, and so how am I treating it on the day to day? Am I feeding it well? Am I sleeping well? Am I exercising well? Like, what is my stress level like? What is where am I at essentially? And so in the prior, and I couldn't tell when you came in, I just saw your face appear, is I had mentioned the different stages of our nervous system. So starting with recognizing which state you're in, if you're in the I'm connected to everything stage, or I'm in the fight or flight, like I just want to fight everyone stage, or if I'm in a freeze and I just want to shut down and run away and hide, then I can navigate how I can show up in the world. So that's the before. The during, so if you're experiencing something in the moment, of course you're going to be activated. Of course you're going to be triggered, and that's okay. You are allowed to experience you're allowed to experience how you experience it. So the only thing is we are responsible for how we respond. Now, if someone's coming at you, like for example, and I don't think you were here for this, was the specific microaggression that has impacted my life of you don't look native. Are you sure? So sitting with that one and experiencing that one time and time again, like I just experienced it yesterday, which is fine. My nervous system was in an okay state. I laughed it off. I didn't take it too seriously because this person is from a different country and they have an idea of what Indigenous people or Aboriginal people, some people don't understand what Indigenous means. So what in Indian people look like, not from India, but from Canada. Um, so during, I can experience the anger, I can experience the hurt, I can experience the sadness, the loneliness, the separation. Um, but how I choose to respond is up to me. So I can respond like, F you, you don't know what you're talking about, or, I'm one of the original people, you should know who I am kind of deal. I'm not like that, but I know people who are. Um, or I can choose to be curious. Well, what did you like? I like to ask people questions like, well, what do you think indigenous people look like? Like, what do you think I present as? And some people say Filipino, some people say this, some people say Taiwanese. I'm like, I don't care, whatever. I'm everything,
Hmm.
just from the earth. Um, so that's during and the after effect. So again, checking in with your nervous system. Where is it at? Is it activated? And making sure that you're not responding in that activation, right? I'm not focusing on the individual who is providing the microaggression. Now, in the after effect, that's when you can look at the individual as well. And that's the second component of my paper of looking at the drama triangle, right? Where am I being the victim? Where am I being the perpetrator? Where am I being the rescuer? Am I trying to mitigate the situation by making sure people know that Indigenous people still exist? Like, what kind of energy am I providing to those people who are simply, they just don't understand. They're unaware,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Um,
mhm,
and I think in recognizing the drama triangle in the short term, you're able to look at it from an overview perspective. Now, a lot of the times we want to be in that worm view perspective or that cricket view perspective, but a lot of times we need to take the overview perspective and see that we're human. We, make mistakes. What kind of environment did they grow up in? Again, meeting it with curiosity and meeting it with a little bit of gentleness, because we can use a lot more of that in the world rather than
mm,
that FU energy of like, you need to know me now. um, so I
mm,
hope that answers a bit of your question.
mhm. Thank you. Thank you, Jordan. And thank you, Samantha.